My name is Marcus Webb, and for 2 years I have been a stranger in my own marriage. My wife Claire was in a car accident on a Tuesday morning in November. Black ice on Route 9, just 3 miles from our house. She hit a guardrail at 40 miles an hour, and by the time the paramedics reached her, she had already lost consciousness. I remember standing in the hospital hallway in my work clothes, still holding my coffee thermos, listening to a doctor explain that the traumatic brain injury had caused a selective retrograde amnesia. Her memories of the past 5 years were gone. Our first date, our engagement, our wedding, me. All of it erased like chalk off a board. She looked at me from that hospital bed like I was a polite stranger who had wandered into the wrong room. I told myself it was temporary. The doctor said it might come back. Fragments at first, then more. I moved her home, converted the guest room into a comfortable space where she felt safe, kept my distance so she wouldn't feel pressured. I labeled things around the house with little notes, gentle reminders. I cooked her meals and left them by the door if she wanted to be alone. I played her the music she used to love, thinking maybe a song would unlock something. Most nights I sat in the living room and listened to her breathe on the other side of the wall and told myself this was still love, even if she couldn't feel it. I kept every doctor's appointment. Hired a home care aide named Sandra who Claire liked. Paid for the specialists, the cognitive therapy, the follow-up MRIs. I did all of it because she was my wife, and I had promised I would. What I did not do, what it never occurred to me to do, was question what I had been told. That changed about 3 months ago, on a Friday evening in September. I had put on a playlist while I was cooking dinner. Old songs, ones Claire and I used to listen to on road trips before the accident. I wasn't even thinking about it. Then a specific song came on, a slow, kind of forgettable folk song by an artist most people have never heard of. Claire and I had stumbled on it at a tiny live music venue on our 2nd anniversary. It became our song in the quiet, private way that certain things become yours without you planning it. I heard a sound from the hallway. Claire was standing in the kitchen doorway, her hand pressed flat against the wall. She wasn't looking at me. Her eyes were closed, and her lips were moving, just barely, following the words of a song she was not supposed to remember. I turned around slowly so she wouldn't notice me watching. By the time she opened her eyes, I was staring at the stove. But my hands had gone completely still. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark and ran through every explanation I could think of. Muscle memory. Coincidence. The mind recovering fragments without conscious awareness. All of it was possible. All of it felt insufficient. Over the next 2 weeks, I started paying attention in a different way. Not out of suspicion, yet more like someone who has been sleepwalking and suddenly feels the floor change under their feet. I watched her the way you watch something you're not sure you actually saw. She flinched once when I mentioned the name of the restaurant where I had proposed to her. Just a small tightening around her eyes, gone in half a second, but I had been looking directly at her. Another time, I left our wedding album open on the coffee table before I left for work. When I came home, it had been moved to a different shelf. Not put away, not face down. Just moved, like someone had looked at it and then needed it to be somewhere slightly less visible. And then there was the morning I came home early from a job site, a Thursday, and found Claire sitting at the kitchen table. She didn't hear me come in through the garage. She was holding a small piece of paper in both hands, reading it. When she finally heard my footsteps and looked up, something crossed her face that I can only describe as fear. Not startlement. Fear. She folded the paper quickly and slid it under her leg. She smiled at me and said good morning, and asked if I wanted coffee. I said yes and acted like I hadn't noticed anything. But I stood at the counter with my back to her, and my chest felt like something had caved in. That night, after she went to bed, I sat in the car in the driveway for a long time. I thought about her face in that moment. I thought about the song. I thought about the wedding album, and I made a decision I am not proud of but do not regret. I told Claire I had a week-long project in Denver. A commercial build, I said, showed her a fake email on my laptop. I packed a bag, kissed her on the cheek, she allowed it. The way she always did, politely and without warmth, and I drove away. I parked 2 streets over at my friend Daniel's place. Daniel is one of those people who asks no questions and loans you his spare key without blinking. I told him I needed to use his truck for a few days and left it at that. The first night, nothing unusual happened. Sandra arrived at 8 in the morning, left at 6 in the evening. Claire moved around the house, watched television, called her brother Owen once for about 20 minutes. Owen Hargrove, 3 years older than Claire, ran the operational side of Hargrove Construction, the company their mother had built from nothing before she passed away 4 years ago. When Claire and I had married, she had inherited her mother's 38% ownership stake. It was a significant share. Enough that the 2 siblings together controlled the company outright, but separately, Each one needed the other to do anything meaningful. I had always found Owen a little cold toward me. Claire had told me early on that her brother had expected her to marry someone from within their industry, someone who understood the business. Instead, she had married an architect she met at a mutual friend's birthday party. Owen had been cordial at our wedding. He had never been warm. On the second night, I parked down the block and watched the house from Daniel's truck. At 9:15, a car I didn't recognize pulled into our driveway. A silver sedan. A man got out. He was maybe 40, trim, wearing a jacket. He let himself in the front door with a key. I sat there in the dark with both hands on the steering wheel and breathed. He stayed for 2 hours. When he came out, he walked back to his car unhurriedly, like a man leaving his own house. I photographed his license plate on my phone. I watched his taillights disappear, and then I drove to Daniel's and sat on his couch until 3 in the morning without saying anything. The next day, I called a private investigator named Roy Castillo. I had used him once before for a background check on a contractor who had given me an uneasy feeling. He was thorough, quiet, and did not moralize. I gave him the license plate number and the name Dr. Neil Paston, which I had found on a business card tucked inside a coffee mug in our kitchen cabinet. The card said Neurological Rehabilitation Specialist. I had never seen it before. While Roy worked, I dug on my own. Dr. Neil Paston had a website, a professional headshot, a list of credentials, and a phone number for a private practice in Westfield. When I called the number, a woman answered and confirmed he was available for new patients. Everything looked real, spotless. But when I cross-referenced his listed medical license number with the state board database, the name attached to that license was not Neil Paston. It was a name I didn't recognize yet. But I wrote it down. Roy came back to me in 4 days. He called me while I was parked outside a diner, eating a sandwich I didn't taste. He said, "The man you're looking at is not a licensed neurologist. His real name is Curtis Vane. He lost his medical license in Ohio 8 years ago following a complaint involving a patient's treatment records being falsified. He relocated, changed his name, built a new identity. He has no legal right to practice medicine in any state." I put the phone down on the passenger seat and stared at the road for a long time. Curtis Vane. Posing as Dr. Neil Paston. Coming to my house twice a week, apparently for months. With a key I had never given him. That night, I returned home, coming in quietly through the back door I had left unlocked. It was almost midnight. The house was dark. I stood in the kitchen and thought about what I knew and what I didn't know, and what I was afraid to find out. Then I went upstairs and knocked softly on Claire's door. She opened it after a moment. She was awake. She had been awake. I could see it in her eyes, the kind of alertness that doesn't come from someone who was just sleeping. I said her name. I said, "I know about Curtis Vane." The color left her face. I said, "I'm not angry. I'm not here to accuse you of anything. But I need you to tell me what is happening because I have been losing my mind for 2 years trying to love someone who won't let me, and I think I deserve to know why." She sat down on the edge of the bed. She put her face in her hands. And then she started to cry. Not the quiet kind, the other kind, the kind that has been held in for a very long time. She said, "I was going to tell you. I almost told you so many times." My legs felt strange. I sat down on the floor with my back against the door frame because I didn't trust myself to keep standing. She told me everything. Claire had not lost her memory in the accident. The accident itself was real, the injury was real, the initial hospitalization was real. But the amnesia selective, convenient, affecting only me and our life together had been manufactured. Not by her, at first, by Curtis Vane, who had been introduced to her during her recovery as a specialist in post-traumatic neurological care. He had been brought in by her brother Owen. In the weeks after the accident, while Claire was still fragile and disoriented, Curtis had begun a process he framed as therapeutic. Memory consolidation exercises, he called it. Cognitive restructuring. What he was actually doing was systematic, calculated gaslighting. He told Claire repeatedly, in their private sessions, that her memories of her marriage were distorted, that the relationship had been controlling, that her feelings for me were trauma responses she had constructed. He used her injury and her vulnerability and her trust in medical authority to dismantle 5 years of her actual life. By the time she came home, she was genuinely confused about what was real. Not fully amnesiac, but deeply uncertain. The way you are uncertain about a dream that felt vivid until you try to describe it. Curtis continued the sessions at the house. Owen paid for everything and told her this was the best available care. It took almost a year before something shifted. Claire began keeping a private journal, handwritten, hidden inside a hollowed-out book on her shelf. She started writing down things she actually remembered, testing them against what Curtis was telling her. The cognitive dissonance became impossible to ignore. She remembered our anniversary song. She remembered the way I took my coffee. She remembered the exact feeling of my hand when I held hers at her mother's funeral. But by then she understood what was happening, and she was afraid. Owen had made something clear to her in a conversation she had recorded without him knowing. If Claire's marriage was intact, her shares in Hargrove Construction were hers alone to direct. She had been, before the accident, in the process of quietly talking to outside investors. She had wanted to expand the company in a direction Owen opposed. With her declared cognitively impaired and her marriage effectively nullified by the amnesia, Owen had been steering her shares through a legal arrangement he had set up during her initial hospitalization, a temporary decision-making proxy, approved by a judge who had been shown only Curtis Vane's fraudulent medical assessments. Owen controlled the company. And if Claire recovered fully, acknowledged the marriage, regained her legal standing, that control ended. Curtis had told her plainly that Owen had contingency plans, that there were things Owen was capable of, that the safest thing for her was to stay quiet, stay compliant, and wait for a moment to act that would never come if she moved too soon. She had been terrified, not performing, terrified, living in her own home with her own husband, pretending not to know him, because she believed that was the only way to stay safe until she could figure out how to get out. I sat on that floor for a long time after she finished talking. My throat was tight in a way that made it hard to speak. I thought about every moment of the past 2 years. Every meal I had left by her door. Every night I had sat on the other side of the wall telling myself that this was still love even if she couldn't feel it. She had felt it. She had felt all of it. She had just been locked inside it, alone, with nowhere to go. I finally said, "Why didn't you leave a note? A sign? Anything?" She looked at me and said, "I left you the wedding album. I moved it where I knew you'd see. I hummed that song on purpose, Marcus. I was trying to tell you without telling you. I was so afraid that if I did it too directly he would find out. He checks in on me more than you know." That was the moment I understood that the man I had been watching leave my house at 11 at night was not just a fraud. He was a warden. The next morning, I called my attorney. I also called Roy Castillo and asked him to build a complete file on Owen Hargrove's financial activity over the past 2 years, specifically anything connected to Hargrove Construction's shareholder records and the proxy arrangement. Then I went to the State Medical Board website and filed a formal complaint against Curtis Vane under his fraudulent identity. I attached the license number discrepancy, the business cards, and a statement of dates and circumstances. Then I did one more thing. I told Claire about the cameras. I had installed 2 of them the week before, small, motion activated. One in the living room and one in the hallway outside her door. I had told her nothing because I hadn't known yet whose side she was on. Now I told her, and I watched her face carefully, and what I saw was not anger. It was relief. She said, "Check last Tuesday at 8:45. I pulled up the footage on my laptop while she sat beside me on the couch, close enough that her shoulder was almost touching mine. On the screen, Curtis Vane walked into the living room, sat down across from Claire, and spent 40 minutes delivering what could only be described as a performance review. He told her she had been doing well. He told her that Owen was pleased. He told her that the investor meeting Owen had been working toward was set for the end of October, after which things could be restructured and her situation, as he called it, could be formally resolved. Formally resolved. I paused the video and sat with that phrase. Claire said quietly, "I think that means they were planning to have me declared permanently incompetent. Or move me into a facility." My jaw tightened. I pressed play again. Near the end of the recording, Curtis said something that made my stomach drop. He said, "Your husband has been asking questions. He's been seen talking to someone outside the office building last week. It may be time to accelerate the timeline. He had been watching me. While I had been watching the house, someone had been watching me." I closed the laptop. I looked at Claire. She was pale but steady. 2 years of fear had apparently taught her a particular kind of stillness. I said, "We need to move fast." My attorney filed an emergency motion the following morning. Fraud upon the court, medical malpractice, elder and vulnerable adult financial abuse, and conspiracy to deprive a competent adult of legal standing. We attached the video footage. Roy's financial report. Curtis Vane's true identity documentation. The recorded conversation between Claire and Owen. All of it, sealed and submitted before Owen's office opened for the day. I told Claire not to contact Owen or Curtis. I arranged for Sandra to come and stay the night, not as a caregiver but as a witness and a familiar face. I hired a security consultant to change the locks and disable the spare key Curtis had been using. That evening, Curtis Vane arrived at the usual time and found the key no longer worked. I watched from the window as he tried it twice, stood on the porch for a moment, and then made a phone call. His face, even from a distance, was not the face of a man who was confused. It was the face of a man doing rapid calculations. He left without knocking. 2 hours later, Owen called Claire's phone. She answered on speaker with me sitting across from her, recording. He said there had been a misunderstanding. He said he had only been trying to protect her. He said the doctors had advised the proxy arrangement. He said she needed to be careful about who she was listening to, clearly referring to me without saying my name. Claire said, "Owen, I remember everything. I have remembered everything for over a year." Silence. She said, "I have recordings, Owen. I have documentation. Marcus has filed a court motion. It was filed this morning." More silence. Then his voice changed in a way that was worse than anger, flat and precise. He said, "You don't understand what you're doing. This will destroy the company. Mom built that company." Claire said, "Mom built it for both of us. Not just you." She ended the call. Her hand was shaking slightly when she put the phone down, but she looked at me with something in her eyes I had not seen in 2 years. Something clear and present and entirely hers. The court hearing was 4 days later. Owen's legal team arrived prepared to argue that Claire's competency was still in question, but the medical board had already suspended Curtis Vane's fraudulent credentials and issued a public statement the day before. His entire framework of assessments was being reviewed for validity. With his testimony invalidated, Owen had nothing. The judge was a careful woman named Judge Reyes, who read every page of the submission herself before saying a word. When she spoke, she was measured but not gentle. She revoked the proxy arrangement in full. She restored Claire's complete legal authority over her shares and personal affairs. She referred the matter to the district attorney's office for criminal review. Owen sat at the plaintiff's table and did not look at Claire once during the entire proceeding. His attorney leaned over and whispered something to him near the end. He nodded once, mechanically, and that was all. Curtis Vane did not appear. He was later found to have attempted to leave the state. He did not succeed. Outside the courthouse, on the steps in the thin October sunlight, Claire took my hand. Not the polite, tolerant way she had allowed contact for 2 years. She took my hand the way she used to, fingers laced through mine, her thumb pressing against my knuckle. I looked down at our hands and had to look away because I did not want to fall apart on the courthouse steps. She said, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Marcus." I said, "You don't have to be sorry." She said, "I do. You were right there, every day, and I let you believe it. I know why I did it, and I know I had no good choice, but I still let you carry 2 years of grief alone, and that was real, and I am sorry for it." I squeezed her hand. I didn't have the right words yet, so I didn't use any. Owen resigned from Hargrove Construction 3 weeks later, after the DA's office announced it was moving forward with charges. The board, which had spent 2 years operating under the assumption that Claire was indefinitely incapacitated, restructured itself. Claire stepped into an active role for the first time, methodically and carefully, with full awareness of what she was doing and why. She started therapy with an actual licensed therapist, someone Roy Castillo vetted personally and thoroughly. She talked about the accident and the fear and the strange grief of pretending not to know the person you love most. She talked about the particular horror of watching someone she trusted, her own brother, decide that her mind was an inconvenience and her marriage was an obstacle. I started therapy too. For different reasons. 2 years of loving someone who appeared not to know you does something to the way you understand yourself. I needed to sort through that with someone who knew what they were doing. Recovery is not a single moment. I want to be clear about that, because every instinct I have wants to tell this story in a way where everything snaps back into place the moment the truth comes out. It doesn't work like that. There were weeks where Claire and I were gentle with each other in the way that people are gentle around something fragile. Weeks where I would say something ordinary and watch her face and still be waiting for the blankness, the polite distance, and feel a small jolt of surprise every time it didn't come. There were also nights where she would find me in the kitchen at 2 a.m. and sit with me without asking what I was thinking about, because she already knew. We sold the house. It had too many hallways with too many specific memories of the wrong kind. We bought a place on the outskirts of Asheville, close enough to the mountains that you can see them from the back porch, far enough from everything else that the quiet feels chosen rather than imposed. I work remotely now. Mostly. Claire handles her share of the company from a home office with floor-to-ceiling windows that she loves unreasonably. She grows things. Tomatoes and herbs and some flower she can never remember the name of that comes back every spring regardless. I have stopped trying to remember it too. That feels like enough. Some mornings we sit on the back porch before the day gets complicated and drink our coffee and don't say very much. Those mornings are my favorite. Not because the silence is comfortable, though it is, but because it's a silence that belongs to us now, fully and honestly, without anything hiding inside it. I think about what Owen said on the phone that day. That their mother built that company, as though that were an argument, as though love for something someone else created entitles you to take what you want from the people they love too. I have thought about it enough that I have stopped thinking about it, mostly. It is the kind of reasoning that only makes sense to people who have decided that enough ambition excuses enough cruelty, and there is nothing I can say to that which will reach anyone who already believes it. What I know is this. My wife was taken from me by people who thought her mind was a resource and her memory was a liability, and she found a way, inside all of that, to leave me the album in the right spot and hum the right song and wait for the moment when I would finally pay attention. I paid attention. I am still paying attention. That is, I think, what love actually looks like. Not the version that gets tested when everything is easy. The version that stays present when nothing makes sense, that keeps looking even when it doesn't know what it's looking for, that recognizes someone you love in a fragment of a song coming from a darkened hallway at the end of a long and ordinary evening. She came back to me. Or maybe I came back to her. By this point, I have stopped trying to sort out which one of us moved first.